And that's where I kind of look at it and I say, yeah, like you don't have the defense that Lamar and Pat and Josh Allen do, but like they don't have the receivers like you do. And it's not even close. It's not even close either. Like that's the way they're going to win games for the next 5 years here because that's where all the money is. I want to move on to the Cincinnati Bengals and Joe Burrow and what's going on over there. So obviously we know that the Bengals are an absolute mess, right? We know that the organization, the ownership group, they don't do things to put their team in the best position to win. I mean, this is a team that they went to the Super Bowl, and I don't really think they did much to improve that team. They didn't understand the urgency to get a team around Joe Burrow to properly equip him with the pieces around him to go win a Super Bowl. I don't think they did that. And here's the thing. I kind of understand it from both sides, right? Because if I'm the organization, I'm saying, hey, Joe, you're a great quarterback. We surrounded you with two amazing receivers. It's how you're going to have to win games, my friend. And then from Joe Burrow's perspective, I can see it where he's like, look, I get it that you surrounded me with great receivers and that's how we're going to win games. I got to put up a bunch of yards. I understand that and score a bunch of touchdowns. I get that. But I need something on the defensive side of the ball here. I need at least something like, okay, 27 points per game. I can live with that. I can make it work. Right? So I still go back to the organization. I blame the organization because I always blame the organization in these certain situations, because here's my thing. Joe Burrow is a top 4 quarterback in the league. We talk about Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, Joe Burrow, having one of those 4 quarterbacks, and you have a chance to make it far in the AFC side of the bracket. So I'm not going to blame Joe Burrow for the Bengals' shortcomings, but I also do think that maybe some things could be a little different. That's I don't like, because here's the thing. We have to remain consistent with how we do to these quarterbacks, right? How we talk about these quarterbacks. Because there are some people who would say, hey, Joe Burrow, it's not his fault. Nothing's his fault. Absolutely nothing. And I do err more towards the side of that, but I also do understand it from the organization standpoint where it's like, look, like, you're our guy. We didn't do what the Bills or the Chiefs or the Ravens do, where we're like, hey, we're going to go build on our defensive side of the ball. And, you're going to throw to guys like Zay Flowers and receivers on rookie contracts or, contracts that aren't that big. Right? Because that's what those teams do. That's what the Bills, that's what the Ravens, that's what the Chiefs do. They understand they have a great quarterback. So because of that, they say, hey, the quarterback, they'll make it work. Give them above average receivers and they'll be fine. Give him an above average offensive line and he'll be fine. Joe Burrow, that's not the case for him, right? Like he has, I think, the best receiver duo in the game, in my personal opinion. Obviously that's up for debate. And that's where I kind of look at it and I say, yeah, like you don't have the defense that Lamar and Pat and Josh Allen do, but like they don't have the receivers like you do. And it's not even close. It's not even close either. Like that's the way they're going to win games for the next 5 years here because that's where all the money is. So I do put this on the organization when you talk about the defensive side of the ball because they need to do a better job at drafting. They need to do a better job of pro scouting when you talk about, hey, look, we need to go find guys that we can pay $3 to $6 million to that are going to exceed that contract value, right? Like that to me is where the best teams really rise to the top, is that they sign players and they get more out of them than what they're paying them. I mean, like perfect example with the Eagles last year when you talk about Zach Bond, that was a guy that they signed to a certain, a contract that wasn't that big, and he played overvalued that contract by a wide margin. Same thing with, again, same team, Mekhi Becton. They didn't break the bank for him, but they got major contributions from that guy. He was one of the best right guards in football last year. And that's the thing, right? I think the Cincinnati Bengals defensively, they need to figure out a way to do that. And I think that they need to do a better job drafting on the defensive side of the ball, because the draft is the lifeline of your football team. So, when you look at how the Bengals built their team, when you talk about the two receivers, okay, your money's on the offensive side of the ball. You need to draft on the defensive side of the ball and really do a good job of scouting and nailing these draft picks, which I don't think they've done. Right? Like, for example, again, going back to the Eagles, because I talk about a lot of the things with their team building philosophy, because they just won the Super Bowl. I can't remember the last time they drafted an offensive player in the first round. Was it Devontae Smith, right? Like 2022, I think they traded away one of their first round picks to the Saints for their first round pick the following year. And then they drafted Jordan Davis and they traded for A.J. Brown. 2023, Jalen Carter. 2024, Quinyon Mitchell. Jalen Carter and Nolan Smith. 2024, Quinyon Mitchell. 2025, Jahad Campbell. Like, all their money is on the offensive side of the ball. So they've just been drafting on the defensive side of the ball. And, good for them. They've hit on a lot of their picks. I think the Bengals need to do the same thing. They really need to nail that side of team building. And, that to me is where it's a little difficult, because you're trying to build a contender around Joe Burrow and you're trying to take advantage of having one of the best quarterbacks in the game. But it's also difficult from the standpoint where it's like, okay, how are we going to get the type of defensive talent on this team that we need to get in order to get us over the top, in order to at least have a defense that's middle of the pack? Because if the Bengals have a defense that's in the middle of the pack with the type of offensive production that they have and the type of, talent that they have on that side of the ball and how effective they are, they could be a team that contends in the AFC. But unfortunately, I just don't see, especially if they trade Trey Hendrickson, I don't see a path to them having an average defense, because they didn't have an average defense last year. I don't think that they improved that defense. And especially if they trade Trey Hendrickson, it's going to be even worse. So that's where I kind of look at this and I say, okay, they're in a little bit of a tough situation there. So Cincinnati, definitely a team to look out for, and a team that I'm going to have my eyes on. And, I've heard some, and I think Ben's actually going to talk about it today, trade talks for Joe Burrow, like moving on from the organization. I don't know if it's going to get that far. I don't. But I mean, you would love to see them do a little more to help out Joe Burrow on the defensive side of the ball. Again, I get it. A lot of their money's on the offensive side of the ball, but do your job when it comes to pro scouting and college scouting and try and get better talent on that side of the ball.